Welcome to Time Travelling Team, the weekly podcast where we review every story of Doctor Who right from the very beginning. I'm Tricia.
And I'm Paddy. This week we'll join the Doctor, Zoe and Jamie as they encounter the Seeds of Death. We will be discussing the Doctor, the companions, the villains, and giving the story a score out of 5.
We would also love to hear your thoughts on this story. So to join the discussion, you can check us out at Time Teamp, that's TIMETEAMP, on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, or you can email us at timetravelingteamp@teamproductions.com. Paddington, I will hand over to you for your story recap.
Thank you. Episode 1. At the TMAT Control Center on Earth, all supply transfers seem to be going to schedule with the exception of the transfer to Moscow, which is awaiting clearance from the TMAT Control Center on the Moon. The Control Center Assistant Administrator, a woman named Gia Kelly, asks what the issue is, and she is told by one of her subordinates that the supplies from Moscow have ended up in Canberra. She blames the mistake on the Assistant Administrator of the Moon Control Center, a man named Fusham. After correcting the mistake, Fusham's superior, a man named Osgood, enters the control room, but his happy mood is ruined when he is told of Fusham's mistake. Osgood, who had given Fusham the position as he saw potential in him, promises to rectify the situation and is transported to the moon via one of the TMAC cubicles. Moments later, Gia's own supervisor, Commander Radnor, arrives, but she doesn't update him on the situation, believing that she already has things well in hand. On the Moon Control Center, Osgood berates Fusham, who tries to make excuses for his mistake, but Osgood tells him to go back to Earth. Just before he leaves, an alarm sounds throughout the base, and they hear screams coming from the hallway. 3 base technicians run in as they are being chased by some unseen creature. One of them tries to escape towards an airlock, but the creature kills him using an energy weapon. The creature demands that they all obey its commands, and Osgood reluctantly agrees to cooperate, but it is actually a ruse, and he overloads the main video link computer. Another of the creatures arrives and kills Osgood at the command of the first. On Earth, the lack of communication has not gone unnoticed, and Radnor tells Gia to find out what is going on, and fast. The TARDIS lands and the crew take a look at the view screen to assess their new location. After seeing the confusing images of a mid-21st century rocket beside an early Soviet spacesuit, the Doctor realizes that they are in a museum. He suggests going to take a look outside, and Jamie and Zoe eagerly dash outside. As they look around, Zoe accidentally activates an information video about the TMAT system. As they are discussing the superiority of the TARDIS over the TMAT, someone walks in and holds them at gunpoint. Back on the moon, the creature tries to force Fusham to follow his instructions, but he says that he is not skilled enough to do what it is asked of him. The 2 technicians, Phipps and Locke, say that only Gia is capable of assisting the creature, but they cannot get to Earth as the TMAT between the 2 sites has been damaged. The creature says that unless they fix it by the time it returns, it will kill them all. The creature then departs, leaving a guard at the door. The trio then discuss the likelihood of their survival if they comply with the creature's demands, but Fusham says that he will do anything to live. Fusham tries to get them to help repair the TMAT, but Locke instead says he will repair the video link so he can send a warning to Earth. Back on Earth, Radnor is under pressure from his global superiors to fix the supply issues, and he is frustrated when Gia tells him that the problem is coming from the Moon Control Center, but they have no way of contacting them. She jokingly says that the only way that they could reach it is via a rocket, but since rockets are no longer used, they are still stuck for a solution. However, Radnor says that there is a possibility to use a rocket, and that there is one man who can help them. Back in the museum, the armed man asks the travellers what they are doing in his museum, since it is closed to the public. He identifies himself as Professor Eldred, and he assumes that they have come to ridicule both himself and the museum the way that everyone else does, or to steal something. They apologize for the intrusion and insist that they have no desire to take anything from the museum, which they say they are genuinely interested in. The Doctor points out one of the rocket models as being particularly fascinating, and Eldred enthusiastically shows it to him, saying that it was designed for deep space exploration, but the creation of the TMAT stopped development on the project. Jamie and Zoe comment on the 2 being like kids in a candy store, and Eldred reveals that he was the designer of the rocket, so it is special to him as it was his life's work. Before they can talk any further, an alarm goes off and Radnor and Gia enter the room. Eldred then accuses the travellers of being spies for Radnor, but Radnor assures his old friend that he has never seen them before in his life. Eldred remains bitter towards Radnor for abandoning him to go work on the TMAT project. Radnor reveals that he is aware that Eldred has been secretly building a rocket, and he asks him to contribute it to help fix the issue at the Moon Control Center, promising full government support for it. However, Eldred rather smugly says no. Before Radnor can say anything else, Radnor gets an alert over the PA system that there's an incoming message from the Moon Control Center. A video screen then activates, and Locke appears after having successfully repaired the video link. He tells him that Osgood is dead, but Radnor calls out a warning about something behind him, and Locke turns to see the recently returned creature, who is revealed to be an ice warrior. He destroys the video link and then commands the guard to kill Locke, which he does so with his sonic gun. Episode 2. Phipps makes a break for it, and the Ice Warrior commander, whose name is Slar, orders the guard to pursue him. He turns his attention to Fushim, who pleads that he didn't help them repair the video link, and he is still trying to repair the T-Mat for them. Slar lets him go back to work, but warns him that if he can't fix it, then he will die. Back in the museum, everyone begs Eldred to see reason and to contribute his rocket to help save the staff on the moon. Eldred then says that it isn't ready, and even with all the resources it needs made readily available, it still wouldn't be ready in time. Jamie asks Zoe and the Doctor if there's any way that they can help, and they agree that even though the TARDIS would be unsuitable to use, as they could either land past the moon or in a different time period, they offer their experience as space travellers to help get the rocket ready. However, Eldred still refuses to help. A message then comes in for Radnor, stating that the local authorities of various cities are complaining about the delays in the supplies from the T-Mat. Eldred sarcastically comments on the fallibility of the T-Mat, but Radnor counters that unless they fix it, then the world will devolve into chaos and millions will be at risk. Eldred again tries to object, saying that the Doctor and the others will be at risk, but Radnor says it needs to be done, and he orders Gia to organise work to begin on the rocket. Later, Gia expresses her concerns for the trio being suitable to pilot the rocket, but Radnor says that they have no other choice as astronaut training ceased being funded years beforehand. He tells her that in a briefing moments beforehand, the Doctor and Zoe express more space knowledge than Eldred did, but he shares her concerns about Jamie's capabilities. He asks the Doctor if he plans on all three of them going, but Jamie cuts across them and insists on not being left behind. Their discussion then turns to the return trip, as there is only enough fuel to get them to the moon. The Doctor says that they can use the T-Mat to get back, but Radnor says that they will need to fix it first, which could be difficult. Eldred says that there is an automated refueling station not far from the moon control centre. Eldred then takes the trio aside to go over their food supplies and tells them about the homing beacon that will guide them to the control centre. As they are talking, Gia says to Radnor that maybe she should go on the mission as she can help repair the T-Mat. Radnor refuses, saying that he needs her to assist him from the Earth Control Centre. The Doctor tries to reassure them that they will be safe, but she points out that they still have no idea exactly what they will find once they arrive. Up on the moon, Fusion works to fix the T-Mat, but says that even if he gets it working, it will not be able to send any size of an invasion force down to Earth. Slar doesn't seem fazed by this, and says the planet will be under their control soon. Meanwhile, the Ice Warriors search for Phipps, who has been taking refuge in the storage room containing solar power equipment. He searches the room for anything he can use to defend himself. Fusion manages to repair the T-Mat and is told to set it so that they can only receive incoming transfers. Back on Earth, the rocket is put through its pre-launch system check, and the Doctor and Radnor go over the plan, which is to reconnect the video link and then follow Gia's instructions on how to fix the T-Mat. The rocket successfully takes off, but Eldred discovers the video link is not working, and Gia desperately tries to contact the travellers via radio. After a few tense moments, Zoe answers her calls, saying that they are waiting for the artificial gravity to kick in. The Doctor tries to repair the video link, but it short circuits, filling the cockpit with smoke and blowing out the radio link as well. Gia, Radnor and Eldred try to figure out what to do next when they are told about the repaired T-Mat link and its limited ability to only receive. Gia says that she will go up as she is the best chance at fixing the issue. Radnor tries to order her to stay, but she refuses, saying that if he tries to stop her again, she will go over his head to get permission. She arrives at the Moon Control Centre with a pair of technicians and sees Fushim alone. He says that Osgood went insane and tried to destroy the equipment, killing Locke in the process. He says that Phipps was injured and is currently under sedation. Gia finds the whole story to be incredible, but seems dubious when she notices how scared Fushim is, and when he tells her that Osgood apparently committed suicide by going outside the base without a pressure suit. Nevertheless, she and the technician set about repairing the main errors of the T-Mat. Fusion disables the emergency one again, saying that he doesn't want to burn it out, and Gia agrees, saying that it will prevent Radnor from sending guards to bring her back. Meanwhile, Phipps has constructed a rudimentary radio to try and send a warning to Earth, but to no avail. On the rocket, Zoe and the Doctor are explaining how the homing beacon between the rocket and the Moon Control Centre works, saying that it operates on a separate solar power source that arrests the radio links in the centre. They activate it and it successfully establishes a connection. Meanwhile, Phipps continues to try and message Earth, but he's overheard by an Ice Warrior who enters the room. He then flips a switch on the solar power control panel that diverts the power to a solar lamp trap that he had set up, which disintegrates the Ice Warrior. He switches it back and continues his attempts to contact Earth. However, by flipping the switch, he inadvertently cut the homing beacon signal, and the rocket crew desperately tries to re-establish contact, as Zoe points out that they will either crash into the moon or continue drifting off into space. Episode 3. Zoe calculates that if they drift off course, then they will reach the sun in 5 months' time, but Jamie says that they have a bigger problem, as they only have enough supplies for 3 days. The doctor then says that he can hear something coming via the radio link, and they pick up Phipps's distress call. After some initial astonishment that they are speaking to him from a rocket, he informs them of the invasion of the control center. The Doctor and Jamie recognize the Ice Warriors from his description of them, and they fill Zoe in on their history with them. They hope to use Phipps's radio signal to guide them in for a landing, but he tells them to go back to Earth to warn them. The Doctor says that they will need to land and refuel as they don't have enough to return to Earth. Phipps then agrees to keep the radio link open, but he warns them that it could cut out at any moment. They eventually start to make their descent, but the radio link cuts out, and the Doctor desperately tries to re-establish contact, lest they crash into a mountain range or into a forest instead. Phipps manages to replace a transistor in the radio, and the link is re-established, allowing the rocket to land safely. The Doctor tells Zoe to oversee the refueling and tells Jamie to stay behind to look after her whilst he goes to rescue Phipps. Zoe tells Jamie to keep an eye on the fuel pump and to switch it off once it is full. In the meantime, she says she will go to inspect the landing thrusters to make sure that there is no damage that could prevent them from taking off again. In the TMAT room, G and the technicians manage to fully repair the TMAT and say they will go back to Earth, but they are stopped by the Ice Warriors. One of the technicians is killed when he tries to escape, and the other is killed trying to fight back, leaving G surrounded by Ice Warriors. Fusion takes a look at the TMAT and informs Slar that they now have the capability to transport anything to any city on Earth. G tries to get him to stop, but he refuses. She then asks the purpose of their invasion and points out that they will encounter heavy resistance from the full military power of Earth, but Slar says there will be no resistance. Fusion wants to know what would happen to them and is told so long as they are useful they will remain alive. G swears that she will not help the Ice Warriors, but he tells her that she will die if she doesn't. The Doctor successfully makes his way to the solar storage room, where he meets Phipps. He tells Phipps that in order to keep Earth safe, he will have to disable the TMAT system. He relays this to Jamie, who warns the Doctor to be careful of the Ice Warriors. Zoe returns and tells Jamie that the thrusters are damaged and the only way back to Earth is via the TMAT. They try to contact the Doctor to inform him of the new development, but they get no response. Left with no other choice, they make their way into the control center. The Doctor and Phipps are making their way through the corridors when they see Gia being escorted by an Ice Warrior. They scatter as he prepares to fire, and Gia uses the distraction as a chance to escape. The Doctor tackles the Ice Warrior and then leads him away from the others. Unfortunately, he is eventually trapped when other Ice Warriors join the pursuit, but he manages to stave off his execution by saying their leader can make use of his vast intelligence. Meanwhile, Jamie and Zoe are trying to navigate the maze-like corridors when they are forced to take cover when they hear an Ice Warrior approaching. However, he overhears their whispered conversation and they flee when the Ice Warrior starts to pursue them. They manage to give him the slip and continue their search for the Doctor. In the TMAT room, Slar is instructing Fusion to deliver special cargo to various cities in the Northern Hemisphere when the Doctor is brought in. Slar tells the others to find Gia and demands to know how the Doctor arrived. He is skeptical of the Doctor's story and completely disbelieves his statement that the Earth is preparing a fleet of rockets. The Doctor says that an invasion by TMAT is doomed to fail due to the limited amount of Ice Warriors present. Just then, a pair of Ice Warriors arrive carrying a crate of large seeds. They tell Slar that he must begin his orders as given to him by the Grand Marshal, and he leaves, telling the others to find the other humans and keep them under guard with the Doctor, or kill them if they try to escape. The Doctor questions Fusion if he knows anything about the seeds, but he doesn't, so the Doctor says he must find out for himself. He tries to enlist Fusion to make a distraction, and he reluctantly does so once the Doctor says that they will most likely be killed if he is caught. Fusion distracts the guard, but it does not last for long, and the guard turns around and sees the Doctor opening one of the crates. He is about to kill him when Slar returns and orders the Doctor to carry on opening the crate. He takes out one of the seeds, which expands rapidly before bursting, filling the air with smoke that chokes the Doctor, who passes out onto the floor. Meanwhile, Jamie and Zoe locate the solar storage room where Phipps and Gia are hiding, and they fill the young duo in on what happened to the Doctor. They discuss the best way to overcome the Ice Warriors and rescue the Doctor, and they decide to use the old maintenance tunnels to reach the temperature control panel in the main control room. Once it is too hot for the Ice Warriors to move, they can rescue the Doctor and then use the TMAT to get back to Earth. Zoe goes to keep a lookout while Phipps and Jamie work away at the access hatch, and she warns them that an Ice Warrior is coming towards them. Jamie barricades the door, but it won't hold for long, and he gets Phipps to prepare the solar lamp trap. The Ice Warrior enters just as Phipps finishes setting it up, and he manages to disintegrate the creature. In the TMAT room, Slar orders Fusion to send the first seed to Earth, and it arrives at the Earth Control Center, where Radnor is informing Eldred of reports of starvation in areas that rely on the TMAT. They see the seed arrive, and one of the technicians touches it, causing it to expand. Episode 4. The seed explodes, and one of the technicians gets hit by the smoke from it. Eldred and Radnor get hit by some of the residue and are racked with a coughing fit. Radnor checks the technician and sees that he is dead, and Eldred says to turn on the air conditioning to extract the smoke out of the room. Radnor then orders the body to be taken for an autopsy, and he then discusses the nature of the seed with Eldred, who says that some plants reproduce by dispersal similar to what the seed did, and he then realizes that they vented the smoke out into the air in London. Up on the moon, Fusion is following the instructions of the Ice Warriors and sending seeds to selected cities. In the solar storage room, Gia and Zoe are repairing Phipps's solar lamp trap, as the last time they used it caused one of the circuits to burn out. Zoe wonders what could be taking Jamie and Phipps so long to reach the temperature controls, fearing that they may have run afoul of the Ice Warriors. The duo have actually arrived at the grate leading into the TMAT room, and they watch as another seed is being sent to Earth. The seeds have been arriving at their destinations, causing several deaths of the personnel at the respective TMAT centres. All of these events are reported to Radnor and Eldred, who are trying to find a pattern to the locations. Just then, the autopsy report comes back and says the technician died of oxygen starvation, which Eldred is amazed at, as it usually takes several minutes to die that way. Eldred wonders how the smoke that was ejected out into the air is affecting the area. On the surface, foam begins to form where the smoke lands. It continually bursts, with fresh pockets of smoke being carried away by the breeze where it lands and creates more foam. The last of the seeds has been sent for the time being, and Fusion goes to check on the doctor, announcing that he is still alive. Slar is taken aback by this and orders Fusion to take the doctor to the TMAT and instructs him to transport him into the void of space. Fusion balks at this and is horrified when he is told that the seeds would have caused the downfall of his whole race. When he further refuses, Slar threatens to kill him, and he reluctantly agrees but says that he will need to reprogram the TMAT as it only transfers to Earth. As he is working on this, Jamie and Phipps, having overheard Slar's orders, have made their way to the rear of the TMAT chamber the doctor is in, and manage to pull him into their hiding spot seconds before Fusion activates the TMAT. Fusion sits despondent as Slar orders his men to be transported to London. He then leaves and tells his remaining men to find the humans and keep an eye on Fusion. Meanwhile, Phipps sends Jamie back to the storage room with the doctor, whilst he presses on ahead to the temperature controls. However, the grill that leads into the room is too small for him to get through, and he makes his way back to the storage room. Back on Earth, reports come in from various TMAT centres confirming all the causes of deaths being oxygen and starvation. Eldred and Radnor are being made aware of the expanding foam, but suddenly an Ice Warrior arrives via TMAT and begins to wreak havoc in the control room. Radnor summons the guards, but their weapons are ineffective against the thick armour of the Ice Warrior, who pursues the retreating guards and kills them all. He then makes his way to the surface and starts to cross the foam-covered countryside, where he kills a group of men trying to dissolve it. Radnor dispatches more men to try and stop the Ice Warrior, but Eldred says that they will only end up dead like the others. Eldred then realises the pattern of the cities being targeted and announces that an invasion is most likely imminent. Back on the moon, Phipps has returned to the storage room, where Gia says the doctor is okay and is recovering slowly after being given some water, but he is still unconscious. Phipps tells the group about the grill, and Zoe volunteers to try and reach the controls, stopping Jamie's protest by saying that it is the only way. En route through the ventilation system, Phipps loses his bearings, and the stress of recent events causes him to start panicking, and Zoe says that they should rest to give him a chance to recover. This delay is noticed by Jamie and Gia, who does her best to reassure the young Highlander that they are okay. Suddenly they hear an Ice Warrior approaching, and they go into hiding, with Gia standing by to activate the solar lamp trap. It doesn't work, but the Ice Warrior starts to leave. However, he turns back after hearing the doctor moan after he starts to come to. Back in the tunnel, Phipps is unable to get his bearings, and Zoe tries to remember the pathway from the map they looked at earlier. They eventually reach the grill, but they see a guard positioned by the temperature controls. The guard then moves away towards Fusion when he notices him acting oddly, and he says it is because he is hungry and tired. He then notices Zoe and Phipps by the grill, and he distracts the guard by leading him towards the TMAT, saying that he needs to check it. Zoe then makes her way to the temperature controls, and after a brief struggle to turn the large metal dial, she cranks the temperature up. However, as she tries to sneak back to the grill, she is spotted by the Ice Warrior, and Phipps calls out a warning to her, but he is then killed by the Ice Warrior, who starts to move towards Zoe. She then calls out to Fusion for help. Episode 5. Fusion dashes forward to try and stop the Ice Warrior, but he is battered to the ground. The Ice Warrior turns to Zoe, but he collapses to the ground unconscious due to the increase in the temperature. Zoe then goes to check on Fusion, who says he can transport her and the others back to Earth via the TMAT. Zoe then heads back through the grill so she can inform the others. In the storage room, the Ice Warrior advances on the doctor, and Jamie and Gia attack him to try and save their friend. The Ice Warrior easily throws him aside, but he then succumbs to the heat like his counterpart in the TMAT control room. The doctor wakes up just as Zoe returns and tells them about the fate of Phipps and reveals that Fusion can help them get back to Earth. They then all make their way to the TMAT room. Back on Earth, Radnor is dismayed to discover that his superior, Sir James Gregson, the UN Special Minister in charge of TMAT, has arrived and asks to be brought up to speed on recent events. He doesn't seem impressed by Radnor's handling of the situation and is skeptical of his claims about the Ice Warrior, who at that moment is approaching a nearby weather control station. The Ice Warrior makes his way inside and kills the technician overseeing the station's operations. He sets the weather control unit to the dry setting before disabling it for further use. Back on the moon, G tells Fusion that he will be coming back to Earth with them, where he will be held responsible for his actions. Fusion says that he will send the others back first before he follows on after them using a time delay on the TMAT controls. The Doctor, Jamie and Zoe go back first, and the Doctor comments on the unexciting nature of TMAT travel. G then arrives a few moments later and is immediately barraged with questions from Radnor and Gregson. Aldred tells them about the Ice Warrior that arrived to Earth, and the Doctor informs them that the Moon Control Center is in the hands of the Ice Warriors. Fusion still hasn't arrived, and Gia remotely checks the functionality of the time delay switch and realizes that Fusion lied to her about having fixed it earlier. She says that he must be still working for the Ice Warriors, but the Doctor asks why he helped them to escape. Back on the moon, Fusion pretends to be unconscious as Slar enters the room to lower the temperature. He tells Slar that he was knocked unconscious by the others when he refused to return to Earth, and Slar says that he will let him live as long as he helps with the invasion. He says the moon will be a launching point for the incoming Ice Warrior forces, and they will wait until the seeds have done their task. The Doctor asks Radnor if they have been able to find out anything about the foam, and he is told that all efforts have been directed at stopping it. Eldred says that he has some equipment that the Doctor can use to analyse it, and the two depart. Meanwhile, Gia comes up with a temporary solution to use orbital satellites to help operate TMAT in order to deliver relief supplies to the cities most in need. In Eldred's lab, the Doctor manages to get a sample of the foam and determines that it is a type of fungus that seems to lower the oxygen content in the air around it. Eldred says it would lower it to 1/10 of the needed amount for humans, but the Doctor says that it would be very similar to the atmosphere of Mars. Eldred points out that the foam sample is expanding in preparation for dispersal again, and says that they should leave, but the Doctor dashes forward and begins to pour different chemicals onto it in an effort to stop it. Eventually one of them works, and he calls through to the control center to inform the others. He gets through to Jamie and Zoe and reveals that ordinary water was what stopped the foam. He tells her to try and contact the weather control station, saying that he has been unable to get through to them himself. He tells them to instruct the station to create as much rain as possible throughout the country. Zoe tries to use the computer to contact Radnor, but it tells her that he cannot be reached as he is in a meeting. Zoe says that they will need to go to the weather control station themselves. They eventually get there, avoiding the expanding foam and sealing the entrance behind them to avoid being attacked by the prowling Ice Warrior. They discover the body of the technician and the disabled weather control unit, and they then hear the Ice Warrior approaching due to his reptilian hissing and go into hiding. Up on the moon, Slar orders his men to bring in a piece of equipment from his ship. Fusion asks what it is, and Slar says that it is a communication beam that will be used to guide the invasion fleet to the moon, and he tells Fusion to stay away from it. The Grand Marshal calls through for an update and tells Slar that the invasion fleet is approaching on schedule. Unseen by Slar and his men, Fusion activates the video link with the Earth Control Center and begins to question Slar about the beacon's power source. The Doctor and Eldred return to the control center and watch the screen with Gia, Radnor and Gregson. He gets Slar to reveal that the beam needs a stable power supply, otherwise any fault in the connection could lead the fleet off course into deep space, where it would be stranded due to their minimal fuel supply. Slar then notices the light from the video link and orders Fusion to be killed and the video link destroyed. As the others stare on in shock, the Doctor orders an impending satellite launch to be cancelled so that it could be fitted with a duplicate signal beacon to lead the invasion fleet away from Earth. The Doctor then discovers that Zoe never got to tell Radnor about the discovery and realises that she and Jamie have gone to the weather control station themselves. Eldred then informs him about that the station was the last known location of the rampaging Ice Warrior, and the Doctor rushes off to find his friends. He arrives at the station to find the area outside completely covered in foam. He makes it to the door covering his face and begs to be let in before he succumbs to the effects of the foam. His cries are overheard by the Ice Warrior, who makes his way towards the door. Episode 6. Jamie and Zoe follow after the Ice Warrior, and Jamie distracts it in order to lead it away while Zoe lets the Doctor in. A foam-covered Doctor staggers in and helps Zoe shut the door again to stop the foam coming in. Zoe tells him about the Ice Warrior and they rush off to help Jamie. Jamie has managed to lock the Ice Warrior in the weather control room and encounters the others in the hallway. Their happy reunion is short-lived though when they hear the Ice Warrior break out of the room. The Doctor leads them into a nearby solar energy room and shuts the door, which he says should hold the Ice Warrior for long enough until Radnor sends some guards. Jamie says that they will be useless against the Ice Warrior, and Zoe suggests looking around to see if there's anything they can use to make a solar weapon like Phipps did. The guards dispatched by Radnor manage to make their way through the foam using water to dissolve it, and they then enter the station where they encounter the ice warrior. As Jamie predicted, their weapons prove to be ineffective, and the ice warrior proceeds to hunt down the fleeing guards and chases them out of the station. Meanwhile, the Doctor manages to successfully rig up 2 portable solar lamps, and he sets off to find the ice warrior alone. He finds him in the hallway, and he calls out for Zoe to activate the solar regulator, and he successfully disintegrates the ice warrior. In the Earth Control Center, Radnor is preparing to go to the weather control station himself as he is anxious over the lack of contact, but the Doctor videos in before he leaves. He relays what happened at the weather station and asks about the progress with the fake signal beacon. Radnor says that it is currently being tested by Eldred and Gia, and the Doctor says that he will try and fix the weather control unit. Once he gets through, though, he finds the task to be a bit more complicated than first expected. Meanwhile, Gia manages to duplicate the signal perfectly, and when asked by Eldred how she plans on getting to the satellite launch site without TMAT, she says that she found an old petrol car that she can use. Radnor says that he has organised the road to the launch site to be cleared of the foam, but they will need to get rain to get rid of it all. Up on the moon, the Grand Marshal berates Slar for pushing the fleet at risk, but Slar says that he will obtain another human to work the TMAT controls for the signal beacon. In the weather control room, the Doctor is hot-wiring the weather control unit in an effort to bypass the sabotage the Ice Warrior did. He manages to get it working again and sets it to a heavy rain setting. He then heads back to the control center with Jamie and Zoe just in time to see the satellite get launched. Gia asks about the possibility of some of the Ice Warrior ships following the actual signal, but the Doctor says he intends to go up to the moon to disable it, bringing his portable solar lamp device with him. Zoe tells him to be careful, and he arrives in the moon control center where he kills an Ice Warrior guarding the control room. He then sets about disabling the signal beacon, but he is stopped when Slar and a guard return. Slar orders the solar lamp to be destroyed, and he then asks the Doctor if he can work the TMAT. The Doctor initially tries to say he doesn't know how to, but after getting threatened by the guard, he agrees to try, but Slar instructs him to only touch it when he tells him to. Back on Earth, Gia says the signal from the moon has stopped, and so she activates the fake one, but Eldred says there is a possibility that there may be atmospheric interference, and Jamie agrees, saying that if the Doctor was successful, then he would have returned by now. Slar informs the Grand Marshal that he is the replacement that they need, and it is just in time as the fleet is making its final approach. Slar says that nothing can stop them now, but the Doctor says anything can happen, but Slar threatens to kill him if anything does. However, something does indeed seem to be going wrong, as the party in the Earth Control Center, who are monitoring the approach of the Ice Warrior fleet, see it start to change course and veer away from the Earth and start heading towards the moon. Radnor and the others are ecstatic at the sight, but Jamie again raises concerns over the safety of the Doctor, and Radnor says that a squad of guards are en route to be sent to the moon. Jamie says that they can't wait that long and convinces Zoe to use the TMAT to send him up to the moon to find the Doctor. The Grand Marshal informs Slar that the fleet is being diverted into the sun and cannot pull itself free from the gravitational field, and he blames Slar for it before the video link is cut. Slar confronts the Doctor, who reveals that he had just enough time to tamper with the signal, so it was confined to the control room. He tells Slar about the fake signal and the repairs made to the weather control unit, which will dissolve the foam. He then prepares himself to be killed by the guard, but they are distracted by the arrival of Jamie. The Doctor calls out a warning and wrestles with the guard's sonic gun and aims it at Slar, killing him. Jamie rushes to tackle the Ice Warrior and occupies him long enough for the Doctor to use a live electrical cable to kill him. Back on Earth, reports come in detailing the complete disappearance of the foam and the slow return of normal supply deliveries. Gia and Radnor start to argue with Eldred over his insistence for the need of a permanent supply of rockets in the event that TMAT fails again, and he turns to the Doctor for support only to find the Traveller's gone. The trio have gone back to the TARDIS, and Zoe asks where they are off to next, and Jamie replies that, as always, they would have no idea, much to the Doctor's chagrin. End of the story. So, once again, the Doctor has saved us from the terror of the Ice Warriors and their incessant hissing. I recently watched Monsters Inc. for like the 50th time recently with my daughter, and all I could think of was like one of the monsters is like I was going for a stealth / ninja approach with a bit of hissing. It's just funny. So yes, now that is done, we're going to go to our favorite victory location, which is the trivia spot.
Thank you very much, Paddington. So, trivia for today. The air date for The Seeds of Death is the 25th of January to the 1st of March, 1969. The writer of the story is Brian Hales. This is the 4th of 6 writing credits for Brian. We previously discussed his work in The Celestial Toymaker, The Smugglers, and The Ice Warriors.
Mm-hmm.
I've mentioned over the last few weeks that Fraser was considering leaving, and last week was meant to be his last story originally, and then there was chops and changes, whatever. This made it really difficult for Brian to write the story because he thought that Jamie wouldn't be there,
Hmm.
and then Patrick was going to be off on holidays, so he had to write an episode without the Doctor in it as well. So it became a little bit complicated. He wasn't able to complete it on time, so Terrence Dix rewrote a lot of it with Hale's consent, though. That's why Hales
Hmm.
maintains the writer credit. But it was Terrence who brought in the Ice Warrior fleet. That was a Terrence introduction. And apparently, there was meant to be a subplot where Gia gets hypnotized, and Terrence took that part out.
Yeah, like I'm kind of glad about that because like can there please be a race that doesn't hypnotize someone?
Yeah, we're on a good stretch at the moment with no
Yeah,
hypnotization. I want to keep it going for a little while longer.
yeah.
We will discuss Brian's work again when we discuss the curse and then later the monster of Peladon.
The fact that Jamie isn't was like it was difficult to write for him, that might lead into a point I have about the Doctor later on,
Mm,
and
okay.
that's kind of interesting, kind of to have prior to the comment I'm going to make there in a
Mm.
few minutes.
I mentioned, was it last week I mentioned that like originally he was meant to be replaced by someone called Nick. So this
Yep.
story was meant to have this Nick character. And I was like, okay. Um, the director for the story is Michael Ferguson. This is the second of 4 stories directed by Michael. We previously discussed his work in The War Machines, and we'll see his work again in The Ambassadors of Death and The Claws of Axos. This story's working title was originally called The Lords of the Red Planet.
That sounds cool. That sounds cool. I like that.
I don't think it does. It sounds
No.
very pretentious. I prefer The Seeds of Death, I think.
Well, no. See, don't get me wrong. I love Seeds of Death because like the title is fantastic, and what I really enjoy is, I suppose, more so in kind of the classic era, is that the titles didn't give any indication as to who the villain would be until the villain was revealed.
In most cases.
In most cases,
Unless the
yes,
villains were Daleks.
yes. But like as we've seen, like with the Cybermen, like we had like the Wheel in Space, and we had the Invasion, Moonbase, and so on.
Mm,
But I kind of like that. But Lords of the Red Planet just sounds kind of cool.
mm. And actually, speaking of that, I'm going to skip down a second to something a bit further down my notes. So,
Hmm.
we've discussed that, like, with the invasion and Wheel in Space and stuff like that, sometimes the reveals get ruined by Radio Times or whatever releasing casting lists
Hmm.
or, like, including promotional pictures in advance. Steve Peters, who plays Slar,
Hmm.
I think it's Slar now, was actually credited in Radio Times as Alien for episode 1 in order to keep the reveal that it was the Ice Warriors a secret because Peter had never played an Ice Warrior before. So there was no correlation between him and who this alien could be, which I
That's
think
kind
is quite cool.
that's because like just skipping forward like a good few years, with the revival, like episode 5. Now,
Mhm.
what one thing that the revival does is they have a little teaser trailer of what's coming next week. That
Yeah.
like, I think after like the first or second season, I stopped because I hated getting surprised or getting stuff spoiled. And episode 5 of season 1, it's called Dalek. I was going,
Yeah.
how much better would it have been if it was like some title something else? Because that is a
Yeah.
very good episode, and
Oh, it is a very good
I
episode.
cannot wait to discuss it. But that's the one thing about that episode that I find a massive flaw in.
Mm.
But anyway, back to the seeds.
This is actually the only story to feature footage of an Ice Warrior on location, at least in Classic. According to Michael Ferguson, there was a bit of an accident involving this fact.
Oh.
So Steve Peters was leaning against a tree in his Ice Warrior costume, minus his helmet, having a cigarette. And a woman drove past, was completely distracted, and rammed into the back of a police car.
That avocado is smoking.
I just find it so funny. It's like, not only did she crash, she crashed into a police car. It's like,
Yeah.
oh.
Can you imagine that kind of story going, but did you not see? Did you not see him over there?
We mentioned that there was changes made to Brian's scripts.
Hmm.
Brian's script also differed from the initial story breakdown. Kelly was originally a man who was assisted by a woman named Mary Burkott. That was then changed to a female woman named Gia or Gaia Kelly. And Mary became Brent, different Brent. The Ice Lords were originally meant to be their own humanoid species. They weren't originally meant to be the Ice Warriors. They're meant to be more human than the Ice Warriors. And episode 2 would have introduced Slayer's superior, who was named Visek. The spores were only intended to erupt after 4 weeks rather than instantaneously, and initially would have been destroyed by concentrated oxygen, like liquid oxygen, instead of water. So a couple of differences there.
Yeah, because like, one thing that you do notice is that Slayer is very different to the rest of the Ice Warriors in the sense of he doesn't have that same thick body armor that they do. He's more svelte in his appearance.
Yeah. Did we have any svelte Ice Warriors in the Ice Warriors?
We
had a few different helmets, didn't we?
We had a few different helmets, and the only one that I can think of, I think his name was Tirok, is the one that chases Victoria into the ice chasm. His helmet was different, and he was a bit more slender, but he still had armor on. So I don't know where that was, because it was Sonny Caldanez, the guy that played.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
your man from
Evil Dead Alex. That was him, I think. And so, like, obviously, it was a bit more streamlined, but it was armor all the same. So there was only Ice Warriors in the Ice Warriors. This is the first appearance of an Ice Lord.
So, as I mentioned, Patrick is not in episode 4. He was on holidays. This is actually the last story where a main cast member is on holiday during the production. The episode counts per season were changed after this, so it wasn't needed anymore. The footage of the first rocket we see is stock material of Mariner 4, which was a mission launched in 1964 to map the surface of Mars, which is kind of thematically appropriate.
Yes.
The footage of the rocket launch in episode 6 is also stock footage, and that's from a Soviet launch in 1948 of an R-1 missile, which is a short-range copy of a German V-2 missile. When Zoe lets the doctor inside the weather control place, he falls back in the phone, and you can clearly see that she's smiling as she closes the door. That's because Patrick genuinely slipped. That wasn't in the script. That was Patrick fell over, and Wendy was trying really hard not to laugh. This is the first story from Patrick's run that was released on home video. Interesting to know. It was the first story from the 60s and in black and white to receive a release on video.
Cool.
The script originally contained a line where Eldred said that his rocket achieved the first manned moon landing. This was altered to take into account the fact that NASA would probably get there quite soon. So they removed that from the script. Wendy Padbury has another interesting outfit. A more sort of white trouser suit type thing.
Yeah.
Apparently she really liked it. She liked it so much, she purchased it. But she had to pay for it before they started filming. And in the scene where she's crawling through the tunnel, apparently the paint was still wet. So the suit that she paid money for got paint on it. Okay, moving on to our cast. So as Daniel Eldred, we have Philip Ray. This is the only Doctor Who acting credit for Philip. His non-Who credits include Star and Company, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, Sons and Lovers, Z-Cars, Little Big Time, and Conqueror's Road. Philip passed away in 1978. Phibbs is played by Christopher Call. This is the first of 2 acting credits for Christopher. We'll see him again in The Mutants. His non-Who credits include Z-Cars again, Coronation Street, United, and Grange Hill. Christopher passed away in May of this year. Commander Radner is played by Ronald Lee Hunt. This is the first of 2-ish appearances for Ronald. I say 2-ish because we'll see him again in Revenge of the Cybermen. And there's flashbacks to that in Earthshock. So he himself is not in Earthshock, but there's flashbacks.
Okay.
His non-Who credits include Oscar Wilde, Crossroads, Out of the Unknown, The Naked Sun, General Hospital, The Omen, Emmerdale Farm, Frankenstein, and Z-Cars. You got a look on your face when I said The Omen.
Well, yes, because now I have to figure out who the hell he is in The Omen. So, carry on.
Ronald passed away back in 2005. Gaia, Kelly, whichever, is played by Louise Pajot. Pajo.
Depending on where she's from, it could be Paho
Pajo or whatever.
or
Louise.
Pajo.
Played by Louise. Only Doctor Who acting credit for Louise. Her non-Who credits include Romeo and Juliet, The Avengers, Jane Eyre, UFO, Prisoner, Cell Block H, A Country Practice, and Home and Away. Louise passed away in November of 2020. Lastly, as Fusham, we have Terry Scully. Again, only Doctor Who acting credit for Terry. His non-Who credits include An Age of Kings, Z-Cars Again, The Forsyte Saga, Softly Softly, Treasure Island, and Blake 7. Terry passed away back in 2001.
And I found out who he plays in The Omen. He
Who?
plays a fucking just a bit character. He's a blink and you miss a character, but he does share the scene with Patrick Troughton,
Oh,
who comes
good
up
to
to
know.
warn Gregory Peck, that I need to talk to you, and it sets off the whole really creepy Patrick Troughton moment in that story.
Before we end off this section, we do want to take a moment to remember Jackie Lane. So Jackie passed away earlier this week on June 23rd, 2021. Jackie played the first Doctor's companion Dodo from the massacre to the war machines, and our thoughts and prayers are with Jackie's loved ones at this time.
Yes. So, once again, as always, that makes sense. Yeah, it does. Thank you very much for all the very interesting information from the Trivia Spot, Trish. We're now going to go on to the main part of the podcast, which is the character discussion. So we have the Doctor, the companions, the villains, and as has become a bit more frequent in recent weeks, is the prominent character section, of which they are not quite villains, nor are they directly companions of the main characters. So this week we have, as always, the Doctor, Jamie, and Zoe. We have Eldred and Phipps as companions. For prominent characters, we have Radnor, Gia, and Fusham. And then for the villains, we have the Ice Warriors. So, as always, we shall begin with the man himself. And Trish, what do you think of the Doctor this time around?
I think this story is really good in that we see all the different sides of the Doctor.
Mm-hmm.
We see his fun side, we see his science nerd side, we also see him like science broing it up with Eldred. We see his serious side in a big way, and we see his dangerous side.
Yes.
And all of those things together are so perfectly portrayed by Patrick.
Mm-hmm.
None of them seems out of place. Like none of it seems like, oh, what the hell happened there? Like why is he what the fuck? Like where's this coming from? It's all very natural. It's all very naturally paced, and fair dues to Terrence and to Brian for writing it that way. That's all very naturally paced, and Patrick goes from one moment to the next in like it's just such a natural movement.
Yeah.
I think of all the episodes we've talked about that shows the multiple different sides of the Doctor, I think this is the one that probably had the most natural flow through those different sides.
No, big time, big time. Now, when you spoke about the most dangerous side of him,
Mm.
because I have a comment about that aspect of him, but what is your take on, or what's your view of his dangerous side?
I have two. There's
Okay.
a small component
Mm-hmm.
which is measured and a big component which is less measured. So
Okay.
the measured component is he makes his own heat ray thing.
Yeah.
So Phipps made one and then the Doctor made his own one. And I say that's a more measured example of his dangerous side because when Phipps did his, those Ice Warriors were gone. They
Yeah.
were dust on the ground. Whereas the Doctor's just seems to knock them out. Or potentially kill them but not destroy the body.
I think it's the second option. I think they die, but they don't go. They get zatted once, not twice, or no,
Yeah.
three times.
So
Three times. Three times.
three
Sorry.
times, yeah. So they get zatted twice.
They get zatted twice.
uh,
Yeah.
not three times, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a very measured response. It's not overkill. It's a necessary evil. The broader side of it is that he does not even try to talk to Slar or to Slar's leader
Mm-hmm.
around the end of the story. It's we're going to redirect them into the sun, and that's it. And like Zoe mentioned earlier, that it would take months for them to actually eventually die up, and then you start saying, well, they wouldn't even take that long because they would gradually boil alive, essentially.
Yeah.
And the thing that I find that interesting, like from a dangerous side, is that there was no morality question, and there was no give them a better option, or you know knock them off course
Hmm.
in the hopes of then finding a way to correct them to go back to their own planet or whatever.
Yeah.
It's he just fucked off and let them go into a sun.
That's like those are the 2 points that I had raised as well, and like with the Cyber fleet or the Ice Warrior fleet,
Mm,
that type of behavior I think has only been exclusively reserved for the Daleks, primarily coming from like the first Doctor, where like
mm,
remember going back all the way to the Daleks, where he said like even if I wanted to, I can't.
yeah.
Like when the Daleks asked for mercy, or then like in Dalek Invasion of Earth when he said, "This is the final order to the Robomen: kill all the Daleks."
Mm,
So it's only ever been reserved for that one specific enemy. Everything else he's given the option to try and fix your ways.
mm.
So that coming out here, I thought was very, very intense. Now, the first point you made though about the solar lamp weapon, I thought that's probably the most violent we've ever seen him, because he is like he's brandishing it like it's a gun,
Mm.
and he's there and he's blasting the guys. Do you think that this decision to have him be that violent plays into the issue surrounding the writing of or Jamie's reduced role? Do you think if Jamie had been, say, if Fraser had said that there had been, if he hadn't considered leaving, do you
Mm.
think Jamie would be the one doing this instead of the Doctor?
I don't think so, because still, even if Jamie was the one using it,
Hmm.
it still would have been the Doctor building it.
Oh yeah, no, like obviously, yeah, the Doctor would
And
have to build it.
yeah, and I don't know. I don't think in this story it's hard to imagine what it's hard to imagine how they would write the story differently
Hmm.
if Fraser hadn't been considering leaving. It's hard to imagine what that would come out like. I think though that I think it works for the Doctor in this story, and it doesn't seem like it's an interesting discussion point, but in my mind it's not out of place
Hmm.
because it's not violent in the sense of he doesn't disintegrate them.
No.
It's relatively quick.
Hmm.
Um and it's not something the Doctor came up with. It's a mechanism we've
Yeah,
seen
we've seen.
works. I
Yeah,
think it was if he came up with it in his own mind, you would like, whoa, Jesus, calm the fuck down. Like,
there was something very Ripley about it. I found. When she straps the flamethrower to the assault rifle, just like this kind of ad hoc weapon. No, I agree with you with everything that you said about him here. I love his Hail Mary science when he's just basically throwing random
just
vials of
fucking everything.
onto the
But
wall.
one thing that I find funny about that, it's very, it kind of reminded me a little bit of the moon base actually, with the poly cocktail.
Yeah.
Um, and the reason for that is he has no idea if it was the water that did it
Hmm.
or if it was the combination
Nation.
of
Yeah.
those chemicals.
And like he clearly didn't learn anything from Zoe scolding on the Crotons. Like, how could you be sure that it was the sulfur that did the tellurium? How it was completely tellurium?
Yeah,
There's one fantastic moment in this story, and it's at the very end when the Doctor tells Slar like your plans were foiled, and he just stands straight, closes his eyes, and waits to get shot.
yeah.
It's a it's
I
a
thought that was brilliant.
like it's a I think I think by virtue of the fact that like I had paused because I needed to write up the notes to that point, I just saw it and I was like, "That's an amazing moment from Troughton.
Mm.
It's an amazing Doctor moment, and it is very fitting for the Doctor character to kind of go, like he's protected his friends and he's protected the people of Earth and he's done the right thing. It's not for him to try and finagle or weasel or whatever his way out of it. He's willing to accept his debt at that point. I thought it was a great moment from Troughton.
I do too. There was one other moment that I particularly loved, and It's something that we see with doctors every now and again, and I always love it when it comes up. And it comes up in different ways for each one of them. When he's waking up from being knocked out by the seed gas,
Hmm.
he calls for Jamie
Hmm.
and he calls for Victoria. And I always love that. I love when we see the doctor, particularly if it's been a while since the
Yeah.
departure of the companion. I love that. There's one with Victoria again that's going to come up a couple of years down the line. There's one with Seven in Fenris or whatever, the Curse of Fenris.
Curse of Fenric.
Curse of Fenric. There's one with that one is brilliant. And
Mm.
I don't know, I just love it when you get the sense that like he still thinks of them.
Oh, like there's a fantastic, because if you think about it, and unfortunately, I don't think it's seen by as many Who fans as it should. Uh, Death of the Doctor in the Sarah Jane Adventures,
Mm,
when, because obviously you have that montage going forward on the line with the 10th Doctor, and
mm,
that there's thing of, no, everyone, he thought of everyone.
yeah,
Yeah, so that is great, and it's great to see it on screen. And like I think with Victoria it's very special because, as you said, like it happens with right here, and it's going to happen. Yeah, you're referring to Tom, aren't you?
yeah,
Yeah, that clearly certain companions make a, while they may not make a huge dent for some of the fans, they still make a dent for the Doctor in terms of his fondness for them.
yeah, and particularly with Victoria because I was quite critical of the Doctor's relationship with Victoria.
Yeah.
So I like having this little nod to her. I love those types of nods in general, but I particularly liked this one because I was just so critical of their relationship.
Mhm.
That it's nice that the writers acknowledge the fact that when he's disorientated, he went to the fact that she was still with them, which I really liked it.
Yeah. No, I agree. I thought like just a fantastic performance throughout the entire story for Sheldon, I think.
Mm, definitely.
Cool. So now we have the companions.
Yes.
Cool. So we've got Jamie, Zoe, Eldred, and Phipps. So do you want to start
Mm.
off, or will I start off?
I'll start off. I want to start with Jamie. So
Yeah.
Jamie doesn't have a whole lot to do in this story. There's nothing very specific for Jamie, which we've said before isn't a bad thing. You know,
Mm.
people. But again, what I like about Jamie in this is he doesn't let himself be sidelined.
No.
There was very genuine concerns raised about what value would Jamie provide in the rocket.
Hmm.
There were genuine concerns. I understand where they came from. And Jamie's just like, no, fuck you. I'm not letting them go off without me. Don't even think about it.
Yeah.
And like throughout the story, he just refuses to let people sideline him
Mm.
unless, absolutely necessary. And I do love as well, then we see the two major areas of it, but like how protective he is of Zoe.
Yeah.
And then later on, when he's like, no, send me up. He has no idea what situation the doctor's in. And he doesn't care. He's like, send me up. That my place is there.
But
Do you know?
that's Jamie.
Yeah.
That is who Jamie is. Like it's charge of the light brigade almost type thing.
Mm.
So if bullets don't work, the McCrimmon punch will work. Unless it doesn't. Shite.
Yeah.
No, like I agree with you here because like this is another, the one thing I love about Jamie, and it's a testament to Fraser Hines, is that it's consistent performances throughout the whole way through. I think.
Mm.
No, there was something that I don't know if you picked up on it or if it was just, there seemed to be a slight regression from Jamie in terms of the science jargon aspect of stuff. Because I've seen other stories where there's lots of science jargon being thrown around, and he seems to be kind of like, oh, for God's sake, speak English type thing.
Mm.
Whereas here he appeared to be. Now, initially, I thought it was like he appeared to be a bit more tantrumic in the sense of, but what does that mean, and what does this, and whatever. But then I realized, well, he's in a rocket that's about to be fucked off into space unless they fix it. So Yeah, okay. I'm going to maybe like step that thing back a small bit because when we got into Zoe now, my big fear was that we're going to see a case of here where like the writing doesn't cater to two companions.
Mm.
You know, because we've seen times like where like even with the three companions, like, you know, we've split it right down the middle and everyone's gotten like a fair shake of the stick. Here, I thought that we were, and not in a bad way now, mind you, that we were putting the emphasis on one at the expense of the other. But what I realized is like with obviously with the fact that like Fraser's announcement to the writing staff, Brian and Terrence desperately trying to finagle a script that didn't have like, you know, him being sent up to Thunderbird 5, you know, for fucking the majority of the story up there with Barbara and whoever else. Um, but the more I kind of realized that, like the more I thought back on it, Jamie's reactions to a lot of stuff are completely within character because of the danger of the situation that they find themselves in.
Yeah, I'd agree. Like, I had a concern around that as well, a little bit, that he was a bit more whiny
Yeah.
and, you know, a bit of a pain in the ass.
Hmm.
But if you think about it in context, and the thing that sort of cemented it in my mind was actually the wheel in space,
Hmm.
where he did that spacewalk thing.
Yeah.
So the concept of what can happen to you in space if you are not going to where you're meant to be going isn't altogether foreign to him.
No.
Like they were going across open space and essentially being shot at.
Yeah.
So I think when you consider the fact that like he has enough of an understanding to kind of go, I hold the fucking phone. What do you mean that's not working? Like what
Yeah.
the hell? Like he doesn't know enough to know how easy would that be to fix
Yeah.
and how much of a problem is it. He can't compartmentalize that the same way the Doctor and Zoe can,
Hmm.
but he understands enough to know that when the communication system is gone, he's like, that's an issue.
Hmm.
We generally need that. Communication is always good.
Yeah.
So I think his reactions are realistic.
Hmm.
It's just it's something we're not used to with him.
Yeah. Yeah. No. And yeah, and like I think again, the background to the writing of the story does kind of lead into that a small bit, and
Hmm.
but like it's not a complete, you know, it's to make a comment. It's not like a Susan story where it's like really really strong, and then it's like, you know, oh, I've lost the will to live type territory, you know.
The example I'd actually give is that in slightly different ways, the way Jamie's worked into the story and the way he has to be worked into the story is actually quite similar to the moon base. So Jamie wasn't originally meant to be staying on
Yeah.
to be in the moon base. He was meant to be one story, one and done.
Hmm.
So they kind of had to cram him in there. And so he spent most of the story lying on a hospital bed unconscious. And then after that, he was just sort of parroting Ben
Yeah.
rather than having anything of his own to do. I think this is a similar situation handled much, much better
Hmm.
because they know the character now.
Yeah. No.
They know what they can have him do. Do you
Yeah, I
know?
like that. Yeah, I like that. So next we have the 5 feet of fury. That is Zoe.
Back to back science episodes for Zoe.
Yes.
I'm liking this.
Hmm.
I was very concerned about her at the start, do you know, and I'm liking where this is going. I think hopefully Jamie will have a bit more to do next week.
Hmm.
Get that balance a bit more right for going into the last bit. But back to back signs of I love how the Doctor just leaves her to it.
Yeah.
And also, was it just me, or did it come across to you that she was the one in command of the rocket, not
Yeah.
him?
I got that because it actually kind of like going back to the moon base. You know, the doctor's comment, you know, that he has a doctorate from your man in 1880,
Hmm.
whatever, you know, and Polly makes the comment, maybe there's some stuff that he didn't know.
I
For
still love that. That's brilliant.
so I think with here, because as we know, the doctor, yeah, he travels in time and space, but Zoe is probably closer in time to a time where rocket technology isn't, you know, this big fabled thing. So I think, yeah, she's probably in control of stuff more, and especially for the fact that it's a guided vehicle going from point A to point B in a straight line, not the TARDIS, which is theoretically point A to point B in like that, you know?
Yeah, I think to that point as well, like the Doctor has experience with space travel and whatever, and he obviously is familiar with different um ships. Like we even saw that back all the way back in the Sensorites, right?
Yeah,
That he could pilot that ship.
yeah.
But that's not usually his mode of travel. Whereas for Zoe, it is.
Was it? Was it like Indiana Jones? I didn't know you could fly a plane. Fly, yes. Land, no.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, but I love the fact that she got to be the one in charge. You know,
Yeah.
um, she did have a little bit of condescending stuff with Jamie, which is still funny, but it's
Mm,
getting a little bit concerning.
mm.
But Jamie handles himself completely. He just takes it on the chin and is just like, yeah, fuck you. I can read a dial. Don't be an idiot. you know. Um, but yeah, I thought she was really good in this. I got like flashbacks, or is it flash forwards? I don't know how you describe it. With her in the vent, and she's about this wide.
Yeah.
Reminds me again of something coming down the line. But yeah, no, I think Zoe did really well in this. I would have the one thing that I didn't like, because it it sort of sets her up in some ways, and maybe if they'd played it a bit differently. But when Jamie asks her, "Oh, can you get the computer to work so they can contact Radnor?"
Hmm.
and she's like, "Yeah," and all she does is talk to it, but she can't convince it to connect to him. And I'm like, no, literally, in the invasion, we saw her make a fucking computer blow up.
Yeah.
She should have been able to get around that logic a bit better, but then we wouldn't have had that episode. You know, if Zoe could tell him, then that episode and that cliffhanger wouldn't exist. So it
Actually, what did you think of the computer voice?
was so weird.
Yeah.
It's
It's just so like stilted and
it's someone trying. It's so funny, right? I was actually thinking about this, right? So I have looked at in the past. I haven't looked at it in years, but I've looked at in the past writing text
Mhm.
for an AI to read
Yeah.
out, right? Just based on my job, right? And it's actually very difficult to do that. Like you can't just, give an AI a paragraph of a book and have them read it with correct inflection and pausing and breaking and emphasis. It doesn't work that way. You have to be very specific.
Mhm.
What this sounds like to me is a human trying to duplicate the way a computer would read a piece of normally typed text. Do you know? Does that make any sense? Like, it's not like it's not like the computer from Star Trek. It's not Majel Barrett who got inflection and
Yeah.
pausing and tones and whatever. It's the if you had a screen reader right now, it's someone trying to impersonate a screen reader that doesn't know when to pause and inflect properly.
But it was weird, like because like you would think that they would get the computer to sound less sinister. Commander Randor to Dememis, and it's just like going, oh god, it's going to turn on them. It's going to turn on them.
Yeah, it's also clearly never heard of full stops.
No, it
It's
hasn't.
just one constant
There's
string into
no
another.
punctuation whatsoever.
Yeah, but that's what I mean by, like, if you ever have like a screen reader, or like if you ever watch one of those YouTube videos where it's just a computer reading out an article
Yeah.
or whatever, and if everything just sort of runs together. Like that's what happens when a computer like reads out just something in front of you. Like if you want to have it be properly inflected and whatever, you need to have an AI capable of doing that. In the case of like the Star Trek computer, for example, or in the case of our current AI, our current like smart assistants, whatever, you have to write. You actually have to code the content in such a way that they can actually read it.
Mm.
So for me, I thought it was funny that you have, as opposed to it just being a computerized voice, which we've seen before, it's someone trying to actually be a computer and read it the
Ah.
way a computer would. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm looking at my notes now, right?
Mm.
And I have a bit like that bit where I said, I love how the doctor leaves her to it. So the way it was literally being read out is like, love how the doctor leaves her to it, and also seems to have command of the rocket, which is cool to see her condescending stuff. Which it's just this constant string of like just words.
You're just like, wait for the full stop. Wait for, dear God, man, punctuation.
That's why the granddaughter's always like, stop, shut the fuck up. It's grand.
So, veering the conversation back to Zoe. um, again, you've been in my notes clearly because I agree with nearly everything you're saying. I did like her moment of like oh, only someone like the vent isn't big enough for the lads to fit through, and she's like, well, I'll go because and putting that holding out James like going no, it's the only way I have to do this, and fair fucks to her, she's clearly like getting inspiration from the Doctor and Jamie, and she's like, there's no hesitation by her whatsoever. She does her best, like Scooby Doo villain stealth walk to turn up the temperature.
Hmm. Also,
So
that base is really badly designed.
oh
The only place to control the temperature is from the main command area.
yeah,
There is no like, not sure there's a back end system you can use to raise the temperature.
sure, it's a separate fucking room.
Yeah, and also I love the fact that it's not like it's a thermostat. Although I'll get to the thermostat part in a second. By itself, it's like a ship's like steering wheel.
Yeah,
It's like rotated this way. Like there's no idea of how far it is. Did you read the temperatures of that thing it was coming up with?
no,
It was like 20 degrees centigrade, 30 degrees centigrade, 50 degrees centigrade,
and then it went up to 80 or
60
something.
degrees centigrade. And they're going, how are the humans not falling over?
Humans in the future are made of sturdier stuff.
But like, none of them were even sweating.
No.
Do you know? Whereas I think in the original Ice Warrior story, where they did a similar thing where they raised temperature, didn't the humans at least sweat?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, no, they just like you got like perspire, but then again, everyone was wearing fucking thick, heavy fur coats.
Yeah, so I just found that weird. Do you know?
And like I think Zoe was wearing like leather, like so. Jesus Christ, she must have been fucking bucketing.
Yeah, but like it's just like 60 degrees centigrade. Like that's fucking
Nearly twice the fucking body temperature of a human being.
yeah. Like bear in mind, like if it hits 40 degrees in somewhere like Spain or Portugal or something, it makes the news.
Yeah.
Do you know?
So
I don't
for
know. Fucking weird.
our Irish listeners are going 60 degrees, dear God in heaven.
Oh yeah, I was talking about the guys in work with us the other weekend. It hit like what 24, 25 degrees in Cork.
Mm-hmm.
I nearly died.
Yeah. We're not built for sun.
No, we're really not.
So then why the fuck do our people keep going to Australia? So, moving on. We have our story-based companions of Eldred and Phipps.
Eldred must live. No, wait. There's something wrong there.
That's the wrong one again. This isn't a Saxon villager.
When you sent me through the list of characters, I just was going, Eldrad? What the hell is Eldrad doing in the list? And I was like, oh, it's Eldred with
Yes.
with an E.
Yes.
I really liked Eldred.
Mm.
I love the fact that he's just like, you got yourself into this mess. Don't go fucking crawling to me to get you out of it. And even at the end, like throughout the story, and even at the end, it's a little bit dickish, but he's like, so, how's that TMAT working for you? It's just like...
I actually I genuinely laughed when there was a whole thing like, will you help us? No. it was a sort of a nah fuck you type thing with Radnor. I enjoyed that. No, I really liked him. Like, I loved his science bro stuff with the Doctor. Also, like he's probably the easiest person in the world to rob because like he has them at gunpoint and then like they express interest in his rocket. At which point like it's like, oh yes, let me show you everything. It's like cool, fair enough. No wonder you keep getting shit stolen from you.
I get one thing I like about him as well. We kind of mentioned this last week with Beta. Was he's like the Earth's foremost knowledgeable person on rockets.
Yeah,
he's building his own. Apparently, on the sly. No one knows about it. But I love the fact that he's very like, no, hold on, you can't fucking rush this. I was just building that as a hobby. Like, what the shit are you talking about? And the fact that he's like, they could die. Like, he's genuinely so terrified of them using his rocket. He's just like,
It's
no, 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 stop.
it's made from an old Ford Focus and a couple of toasters. uh, I did love like his perception though of the whole thing of that, while Radnor is so busy just focusing on fixing the T-Mat, no one's he's the only one asking the question like, why these specific cities?
Mm.
Like, why not just like they have access to every T-Mat center in the world? Why are they only going above the equator?
Yeah, I think that's very good. I like at the end as well, excuse me, when you have Gia and Radnor both revert back to Tiamat is God,
Mm-hmm.
all reverence for Tiamat, and he's like, no, this has clearly proved the point that your infallible system is fallible. So rockets, let's reinvest in those because it's he's like, were you paying attention for the last or however long this has been? What, 2 days or something? I imagine.
Yeah. The aliens had nothing to do with the initial glitch. um, yeah, I just it's like oh no, it's just like one of those things like where it's like like ooh, piece of candy, where it's just like, oh, this definitely isn't the trap this time. And then we have, do you have anything else to say about Eldred other than that he
No.
must potentially live?
Yes.
Eldrad must live. Eldred, eh. Yeah. If there's room
I
in the
would like
car.
it if Eldred lived
Yeah.
because he was funny.
Yeah. So now we have Phipps, or as I call him, Space MacGyver.
So I clearly missed something when I
Mm-hmm.
was watching this. I don't know. Maybe I blinked. I don't know. How the fuck did Phibbs die? Because he couldn't fit through the vent. So how was he caught in the crossfire?
So the ice wire shot at him.
So the ice wire shot him in the face through the vent.
Yep. And as we've discovered about ice wire technology, it basically twisted his brain inside out.
Okay, because I completely missed that. And then Zoe's like, oh, Phibbs is dead. I was like, fuck, since when?
Yeah, no, because I was kind of going like, oh, like did he? I was half expecting him to come out and try and save Zoe,
But
trying.
he can't get out of the
Yeah,
vent. That was the whole
yeah,
point.
or trying to call her. Yeah, so he just basically got shot flat in the face.
Okay.
Yeah.
I genuinely missed it. And I was like, what?
Yep.
I thought he was a really cool character. Um, you described him there as like Space MacGyver.
Mm-hmm.
I love the fact that the entire time he's just working his own shit in the background.
Yeah. I made a knife wrench.
You can just ever imagine him there, like in that tech room, kind of going do 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 do. Ice Phibbs. Do do do.
Fuck's sake. uh, One thing that I like about what Phipps represents
Mm.
is that it's the great point of Doctor Who is that don't get overly attached to the supporting characters because you're never guaranteed which of them will come out alive.
Mm.
I
That's a
think,
fair point.
yeah, we got spoiled, like, for example, no one's in the Moon Base, where a lot of the predominant supporting characters survived.
Mm.
And because like that's one like, that we always kind of talk about when it comes to supporting cast. And then like here it's kind of you're like waiting like, oh, will Gia potentially get killed, will Eldrad potentially die or whatever it is, and it's Phipps and it's like the guy that helped do so much, it's unfortunate, but I think it makes the time that a lot of people do survive, it makes it that much more special,
Mm. One of the things I like about Phipps as well is that he sort of proves a point in science fiction, which I love.
Mhm.
And you have shows like Star Trek that don't really honor it, or even Stargate that don't really honor it as much. Phipps would never have been a main character. Like, if
No.
you were making a show, Phipps would not have been. He was a random engineer who ran in with all of the other random engineers.
Yeah.
He is like an original series fucking red shirt,
Mhm.
you know? But it wasn't the person in charge, who in this case was Fusham. It wasn't him that was saving the day.
Yeah.
It was, it was the knuckle draggers. Do
Yeah.
you know, if you go to BSG type thing, Battlestar Galactica type reference,
Mhm. Yeah.
it's the knuckle draggers who actually, like, you could lose your main character, as in your leader, and oh yes, I'm in command, whatever. But it's the guys who do the job day to day, the guys who know the tech inside out and back to front,
Yeah.
the guys who keep the machine going, who keep the plane flying or whatever.
Lower decks.
Yeah, it's lower decks. It's held the whole idea of
It's the other guys. It's
yeah,
yeah.
it's what the hell? It's the chief in Battlestar Galactica and his whole crew are knuckle draggers.
Yeah.
It's not always the hot shot. It's the guys in
No.
the background, which I
Exactly.
think Vips represents that in a really good way.
Oh, he really, really does. So now we have the prominent characters of Radnor, Gia, and Fusham. So who do you want to start off with?
So let's do them in that order. Sure.
Cool.
No point in changing.
Yeah. One thing I like about Ragnar, sorry, I've been watching Vikings. Radnor is like, okay, it's evident like that he bought into, like, initially I didn't like him at the start because it's clearly that he bought into Tiamat
Mm,
and he saw how it could benefit, like, I suppose, his standing by buying into it, and he had no compunction about leaving Eldred behind with his rockets. So that kind of soured me towards him at the start. But I started to gain a small bit more, I won't say respect, but appreciation for the character as it went on, because not only was he getting stick from Gia, his underling, his boss is also into the equation. He's like fucking kind of hammering down, and he's staying the course. He's trying to resolve the issue. Now he's
mm.
completely oblivious to Eldred's input in terms of, like, don't send the guards after the ice warrior. It's a waste of men. We need to be focusing on the specific pattern as opposed to just fixing the T-mat. But what I like about it is that he doesn't act like a douche. He doesn't act like your man from the Ice Warriors,
Mm.
the
Yeah.
base commander who was just like, all ego. He doesn't
Mm.
act that way. His whole thing is like, we need to fix the problem, but unfortunately he's just so focused on the problem, he's not paying attention to the potential solutions.
Yeah. One of the things I really liked about him was that, like, I mean, you're right. He did put all his eggs in the team mat basket, right?
Yeah.
But from almost the beginning, he wasn't afraid to go hat in hand to Eldred.
No.
Yeah, he kind of presented it as sort of like, "Hey, so you can help us." It
Yeah.
was sort of presented in this sort of like,
Do it for your old pal Gil.
yeah. um, but as soon as Gia mentioned, "Oh, it's too bad we don't have rockets anymore," he was like, "No, I know the guy. I know a guy.
Mhm.
Come on, let's go."
Yeah.
There was no panic there. Like, and you have to consider, like, he's the guy in charge of the broken, infallible system
Yeah.
that apparently the Earth has become so reliant on that in a matter of hours, there's risks of starvation breaking out.
But like,
What the
that's
shit?
yeah, because like that's the thing is like the constant chain of supplies is going through. Excuse me. So like, how is it being used up so fast? Like that's the thing is like, at this stage of the game, or this stage in like Earth's history, is the population surplus so huge that it demands, like, are we entering like Judge Dredd Mega City 1 type territory, like where it's just such huge population density that supplies run out like that? You know?
Or is it a volume thing where the volume of stuff being sent through is a sort of we're gonna make a bit of a Star Trek reference anyway with the whole team mat anyway, but like, is it like, with the replicator? Like, you don't go to a replicator and get your week shopping.
No.
You go to the replicator and get your meal for the day. I wonder if it gives smaller quantities.
It might be that, because do you remember, like, Fusion points out that the TMAT can't send a large invasion force down. It would have to be
Yeah,
literally drips and drabs.
it's what fits in the booth. Like,
Yeah.
so I imagine that, like, they're sending food to these areas, but if you imagine, like, they were mentioning Calcutta and some other places,
Mm.
if you're sending food through, it's maybe this continuous action. So you've got your people lined up and they're waiting for their week's portion or their day's
Yeah.
portion or whatever the case may be. And then it stops coming, and you've got people in the queue kind of going, "What the fuck?"
Yeah.
Rather than a traditional Western idea of more food than we can manage,
Yeah.
like more food than we could ever hope to eat. Maybe it's a more sort of day to day, week to week type thing.
I think one thing like to do like outside the podcast is like to chart like the progression of Earth through the various stories, like to see like like the highs and lows of how it's getting. Because at this period of time, I don't think I'd like to live in it. You know?
Yeah, there's certain like future Earth stories that I would be quite interested in, and then there's others that I'm like, nope, nope, nobody, nope.
Well, like at least we know one thing: if you put somebody up on the moon, it will work, but it will also be invaded. So
Yeah,
play it cool.
yeah, and don't rely solely on the moon. For
Yes,
fuck's
don't,
sake.
don't.
Last thing I read now before we move on to Gia.
Yeah,
Did he have a thing for her? Or did he just have a thing for her mind?
I think our
Because I
mind.
have a point with her in regards to some stuff.
I think it was her mind.
Okay. I was just
Yeah,
curious.
yeah.
Because
Was it
he's
her?
very fucking defensive of her.
Her big. Was it her big sexy mind?
Like, he just wants to wrap that woman in, like, just, like, bubble wrap and just be like, no. You stay there.
So, speaking of the she who must be protected.
Mm. Okay.
Yeah.
So, my thing, right? we saw how we Okay.
Who's going to go first?
My thing with that, right, is she's cool, right?
Mhm.
Who allowed her to become the singular point of failure for the entire TMAT system?
Mm.
Like, I get having an SME
Yeah.
for a particular thing,
Yeah.
but what happens when she's sick or if she has an accident? Okay, we can't use the hypothetical what happens if she gets hit by a bus because they no longer use buses. But like, what happens if she falls down the stairs
Yeah.
or whatever? Like, she needs to train a backup for herself fucking ASAP.
Mm.
Because if she had died, then from the way the others describe it, like from the way Radno describes it, from the way Fusion was describing it, to the Ice Warriors in the beginning, if she's gone, then Tiamat is gone.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's a problem.
And it's like, but see, this is the thing now, right? Is that I get the impression that one, this is what Zoe would have turned out like if she had stayed on the wheel.
Oh yeah, oh definitely.
And the other thing is that I don't think she has anything outside of the job. I think like literally it is go to sleep, get up, do TMAT, eat food, go to bed, get up, do TMAT, whatever the case
Oh yeah,
is.
you kind of get the sense that like she has quarters on base.
Yeah,
She doesn't have her own life.
yeah,
Tiamat is life.
yeah. And so like in that regards, I suppose like the risk factor to her in her daily life is therefore lessened.
Well, yeah, but like still, I
Oh yeah,
mean,
careless handyman like drops a hammer on her head, from height type shit.
yeah, it's this like even like okay, this podcast is a bad example because we are both points of failure. If one of us isn't here, we generally don't do the podcast.
Yeah,
But like in your work environment,
yeah.
can you imagine if one person left and suddenly the whole thing ground to a halt?
Well, just like it wouldn't happen.
Like what happens if like she's having she gets overwhelmed,
Mhm.
super stressed, and her doctor's like, "Do you know what? You're going to have a mandatory vacation.
Mhm.
Go away for 4 weeks." And they're
Yeah,
going, no, 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 she
no,
can't. You get finished, can't leave for 4 hours. Never mind 4 weeks.
no. Just like it's a this infallible system. There's an awful lot of failure points with it.
Yeah, like the fact that like this is the thing. This is the other thing, right? It's not about Gia, but she mentioned it. At the end, she's like, "Oh, Tiamat will be fine. We're just not going to have everything root through the moon." Why the fuck was everything rooting through the moon in the first place?
Because on the moon there's no natural disasters. Although apparently there's no forests on the moon. So, yeah. If the moon only consists of this one base, why in the name of God did you put forests there?
Well, no, because you'd have two, because you'd have this base, and then you have the moon base. They're two different moon bases. You have, or is it, right? That see, this is the timeline thing now, right?
Yeah.
So in this, environmental controls for the planet are managed in London, or at least environmental controls for London. Whereas in the moon base, they're managed on the moon.
On the moon.
So I wonder if they eventually move away from TMAT, but move environmental control to that same base on the moon.
Yeah, could work.
And then that base gets invaded, and like, motherfucker.
Yeah. Stop
We're
putting
going back
shit
to
on
Earth.
them.
We're going back to Earth. Fuck this shit.
There has to be an easier way of doing the credits. Yes, every time they do a Robin Hood movie, they burn our village down.
Every time they do a Doctor Who episode, they invade my fucking moon base. Leave us alone, Terrence Dix.
Oh god.
I really want to watch Men in Tights now.
Do. I was going to do it was like what kind of accent can we use? Unlike most other British actors, I can speak with a French accent. Cool. Also, the way that she's very, I won't say she's very. It's not like Jay's not like an automaton, but she does have that sense of she had the emotion beaten out of her at the academy. At times, she kind of reminded me of Polly in the War Machines when she's hypnotized.
Oh, are you being hypnotized, Polly, or not, Polly?
Yeah, hypnotized.
Yeah,
Polly.
she is a bit like hypnotized, Polly. I wonder if part of that carried over from the fact that in the storyline originally she was going to be hypnotized at one point.
Possibly.
I wonder if part of that characterization came from there.
And cool. So finally, for the prominent characters, we're going to come to who I consider to be probably the most interesting character in this whole story is Fusham.
Oh, definitely. The thing about Fusham is Fusham could have so quickly become incredibly fucking annoying because he is a coward.
Yeah,
that is very obvious. He is a coward. He is scared of dying, and it resulted in him working with the enemy. But we get those moments where it's clear that he hasn't. It's not like he sided with them. He's just doing it to keep himself alive, to stave off what I'm sure he knows is his inevitable death.
Yeah.
At their hands. And I think that character could have very easily been very frustrating. Like, to give an example, going back to the Web of Fear, and one of your favorite characters from the Web of Fear, whose accent you love to.
Oh, sorry, I thought you meant Chorley, who was a pain in the ass. Driver Evans, yes.
The Driver Evans.
Yeah.
Like, Driver Evans was a coward that was funny, but depending on your preference, could have been kind of annoying.
Yeah.
I think Fusham could have very easily become that kind of annoying character. But they keep him human enough and real enough that doesn't happen.
Yeah, no, his character journey is great to watch in this because, as you say, he's the incompetent, second on the moon, and then it's I'm going to do everything I can to survive, and then it's no, you're going to destroy the earth. It's I can't allow that. And then it's putting himself into a very dangerous situation, not knowing very well that he could be killed. And
I sort of feel bad for him as well because Gia and Phibbs treat him like shit.
Yeah, and there's this whole thing of he's a coward, he's whatever, and what's almost kind of right? Just because I was going to make a statement, kind of like Snape a small bit, in the sense of quite possibly one of the bravest men in the entire team and our organization for the sacrifice that he made.
Don't get me started on Snape.
No, I know, but that was just the most famous example that I could think of.
Yeah, no, I get what you mean, but don't
Yeah.
get me started on Snape.
No, I won't. But it was like the concept of the person that is so reviled ends up being an absolute hero.
Yeah, I think it's this thing of like, Fusham is probably the most human out of all of them. And it's the rest of his comrades' lack of humanity that doesn't let them see it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Gia is literally like, even at the end, going, "No, you're coming back to face charges." And I was like, put yourself in his shoes for one fucking moment. Like, do you honestly still believe that he was doing all of that? Like, of his own, that he betrayed the human race? Like, what the fuck? Like, I think that's what makes it really sad for him because, like, he knew once she came on board,
Mm-hmm.
he knew he was in a no win situation.
Yeah.
Because he knew her well enough to know that if he went back to Earth, she would have him hung, drawn, and quartered, like.
Yeah.
Which is sad.
Mm-hmm. No, and I'm pretty sure that we're going to see characters like Fusham down the line, but I think both the character of Fusham and the actor who portrayed him, they've set a really good bar. I think they've set a really, really good bar. And
Yeah.
fair dues to Brian and Terrence for actually writing and creating like such a very interesting character. Because it's all that's another thing that you like to see is that while the story itself is gripping, a character journey of something like this is also really, really good to see.
Yeah. And I'll say it here just in case I forgot to mention it in my overall. We talk a lot about the strength of a supporting cast.
Mm-hmm.
Moonbase is always our go-to. The
Yeah.
Invasion became part of that go-to. I think the supporting cast in this are right up there with the Moonbase cast. Particularly the guy who plays Fusion.
Yeah, and also the Web of Fear cast because we quite
Oh,
enjoyed the Web of
yeah.
Fear cast. Yeah. No, it's in good company.
Yeah.
Cool. So now we come on to the villains, the Ice Warriors. Now we're lumping Slar in with the rest of the Ice Warriors because none of the other Ice Warriors are individualistic enough to have like the separated stuff. Like unlike because like last time we had. His name escapes me.
We had the two guys who were slightly
we had the two guys that were slightly in charge of stuff like Islan or I can't remember his name, but so here we have them. Although I'm going to say one thing, right? I initially thought the Grand Marshal was called the Grand Martian. I had to go back, and the Grand Marshal, right?
Mm.
Because he his design, the shape of his helmet was a bit more pointy.
Mm.
I was like, a character called Grand something with a very pointy headdress. Oh, not good. So I'm glad that I didn't really have to speak a whole lot about the Grand Marshal. But yeah, anyway, back to the Ice Warriors.
Okay, so we've discussed before, my preference with who is I generally prefer human villains.
Human villains, yeah.
I'm not a big fan of the Daleks. I'm not a big fan of the Cybermen. They have some interesting stories, but I don't come back to Doctor Who for that. I'm not a big fan of the Ice Warriors for two main reasons.
Okay.
One, their fucking voices and the hissing and whatever, it gets in my brain. It's like nails on a chalkboard. It does my fucking nut.
Yeah, I had contemplated telling you, but that it was going to be Ice Warriors in this one. But then I think you already knew that there was Ice Warriors in it, so I was like,
I didn't actually until you sent me the list because I'd forgotten.
Well, at least I sent you the list ahead of time, so therefore
Yes, you did.
You weren't surprised. And
yeah, but like it's just this. Like I don't even like it when I'm editing this podcast and we include a lot of S's in our sentences. Like even editing what I just said
yeah,
is going to wreck my head. It's Oh, it's so annoying. It's so annoying. It's like Darth Vader's respiratory issues
Mhm.
are cool and ominous. Their issues are just like it's nailed on a chalkboard.
Like, I know it's part of their reptilian nature, but it does sound like they just ran up a flight of stairs.
Yeah. Like I wouldn't mind if they were just like if they prolonged their S's,
Mhm.
but like it's the breathing
Yes, like,
and the yeah, no, no, no,
sorry.
no, don't like it. The
But
second thing I don't like about them is they are blind as fuck. They have zero peripheral vision whatsoever. And I
mm,
get that like Doctor Who at this point in time, they're a bit limited by the size of their sets and stuff. But like the soldier ice warriors, I suppose is the best way to describe them.
yeah.
They walk into a room
Mhm.
and there are people on both sides of them. They don't turn their head to look to either side. They only ever look straight.
Mhm.
And they clearly have no peripheral vision, so they can't see these people who are very obviously there. Like when Zoe was creeping over to turn up the temperature,
Yeah.
like if, if that was
Holy.
in real life, you sort of see this person out of the corner of your eye. And it's like they don't have a corner of the eye. Which, given the fact that they're slightly reptilian, seems weird.
But see, do you remember that? Like, so the because we go back to the regular Ice Warrior, the first Ice Warriors, and there was meant to
Mm,
be this whole thing of like they were meant to be like frozen warriors, like frozen
yeah,
knights. I think that hallmark is kind of carried over into the fact that they're wearing armor, and that helmet is probably meant to be like a knight's helmet. So like the visors, you really only have what's in front of you.
that's fine. Then turn your fucking head when you're looking for someone.
Yeah, because to be fair, like Jamie didn't really do a good job of hiding by just clinging to the side of the filing cabinet.
It's like either have him stop short of the filing cabinet
Hmm.
or have him turn his head and go, oh, there's a human there.
Maybe they're
Holy
like T,
shit.
maybe they're like T Rexes. Their vision is based on movement.
Um, Other than that, though, right? So I'm not a big fan of the aesthetic of the Ice Warriors. Um, their plan was interesting,
Mhm.
and I have a question.
Okay.
How did they know about Tiamat? How do they know which Earth cities are in the Northern Hemisphere? How do they know their names? How do they know how they're manned? And how do they know that the default action would be to open the ventilation systems and send the gas out into the atmosphere rather than trying to filter it some other way? Go.
All right. So standard answer is, oh, it's probably in the novelization, but no, the I've okay. So there is actually an awful lot of interesting stuff here because I raised the point earlier on about like how like it's never implied, but did the ice wires cause the initial malfunction with the TMAT?
No, that was Fusion being a dope.
Yeah, so yeah, because I was going to say like you saw them that their whole plan was like fucking stupid, like because it's like disable, it's like what was it like almost like the Wheel of Space. Like, yes, we'll sabotage it so that it's forced to repair it so that we can get onto it, and therefore, it's just stupid.
No, that was Fusion being lazy
Yeah,
and delaying things by 5 minutes, and then Osgood
like I think there is a
deliberately
bit,
sabotaged
yeah,
it. Then
there is a bit more here. Like that, I think the exposition could have a bit more exposition could have helped. Kind of given to the side of things
at least
because
showed them looking at a map.
like because see again like you have the whole thing of like Fushim is telling them stuff, and we know that Fushim has been telling them stuff, but we're never given an indication like that. Oh, did Fushim tell them all about what name the cities that are above, like or that are in your northern hemisphere? um what is the standard protocol for like I don't know, like a gas invasion, all this type of stuff. Like these are the type of things that you'd assume that are being
Yeah, but
asked.
the whole idea behind the gas invasion was based on Tiamat.
Yeah.
And like they knew that humans had a way of controlling their weather. How the fuck did he know that? And how did he know that was managed from London? And again, some of this, like I said, Fusion explained some things, but like the core attack plan.
Mhm. Well, like I suppose we have to take into account, right, that this is a scout, a reconnaissance party that went on ahead, but we have no idea like how long they've been on ahead. Like, how long did they scope out the TMAT center? Like, did they? And like, there's like obviously there's the concept of the guys go outside on the perimeter and they do walks around the moon or the TMAT base because GA comments are going it would be suicide to go outside there without a pressure suit.
Mm.
So maybe that they were there for a while and they were just observed and then they attacked. But
Maybe.
there's a lot of maybes there. Like
Yeah.
there's an awful lot of maybes there. So I think that again, kind of like when we had Evil Daleks with all the red herrings and plot points kind of going that led to nowhere. Maybe this is an inverse where like a bit more exposition would lead towards a bit more understanding.
Mm.
Um, I think I have a soft spot in my heart for the Ice Warriors. I don't know how. I just think like I've always been kind of fascinated by lizard people races. Um,
Which is odd given your
no,
sheer hatred of snakes.
yes, but lizards, not snakes.
Reptiles.
Yeah,
They're
but
related.
okay, yes, okay, but like it's like the type of thing where it's like okay, like I don't know honestly. Okay, sure, right. I'm terrified of snakes. Okay, but as you said, they're reptiles. They're part of a huge SWAT of reptiles. I also fucking hate sharks, but I don't mind other types of fish.
Oh no, it's a salmon! Run away!
uh,
But he might give me knowledge. Shit.
uh,
Irish mythological joke, everybody.
uh, taste mank. It was untold knowledge, and that's the worst. That's the best you can come up with to describe it. Mank.
It burnt my thumb.
Fish burnt my thumb. Now my thumb is big. So I have a soft spot in my heart for the Ice Warriors, and they are more so than I think anything that we've seen so far. They are a classic sci-fi horror villain
Mm.
because you've got like the cold, steadily approaching menace of that singular ice warrior with the path of destruction through the countryside, inside the base, hunting people down in the corridors. That it's like it's great for like old sci-fi.
Yeah, and it does tie into the whole. And the Daleks and the Cybermen have it a little bit, but I think
Mm,
because of the annoying noise that
yeah,
the Ice Warriors have a bit more this idea of it doesn't matter how fast you run, the
mhm,
slow moving thing behind you
yeah,
will eventually catch you.
exactly. And especially because you can always hear them coming.
Yeah.
um, I like that we're again like some of our recurring villains. We're getting to see a bit more diversity in their society and civilization. So now we have the split between Ice Warriors and Ice Lords. I think that Ice Lords are clearly not meant to be frontline troops, like because of the
Mm.
fact that they're not wearing armor. So like they kind of command a bit more. I won't say respect, but the fact is like that they're clearly the more strategic ones, and the Ice Warriors themselves are just the muscle that go out and does stuff. Excuse me. Um, I thought Slar was actually kind of intimidating. Like it is the thing of like he's. I was waiting for him to just kill Fuchsia, but he's very smart because in the sense of as it's always that kind of sword over the head. It's like you if you continue to help us, I will let you live. But there's always that thing for now.
Mm.
I'm not going to say I'm not going to say that I'm going to let you live indefinitely, but it's just as long as you help me with my cause, I'm going to let you live. And some like we've seen in other scenarios where other characters completely fall for that and they end up being murdered for it, or killed
Yeah.
for it. Like Maxwell in or Maxtable in Evil Dash, the guy that lived in Whitstable,
You
um,
said Maxwell, and my brain went to Maxwell Sheffield from The Nanny.
God, I
I
haven't
don't
seen
know
that.
why. I was like, it's the only Maxwell character that came to mind.
That's an amazing show. I haven't seen it in ages. So I think that but one thing I will say is that this is a much better showing for the Ice Warriors than their actual introductory story.
Oh yeah. Oh definitely. I would agree. 100%.
Yeah. So yeah, and like I no, I'm quite enjoying them, and I think over time they get a small bit more bearable on the auditory side of things.
A little bit.
Yeah, there's less panting and
A
puffing, but
smidge.
yeah, there's less panting and puffing.
The thing now that I'm curious to see
Mm-hmm.
is what happened to them in this story.
Mm-hmm.
Does that have repercussions down the line?
Oh yeah, because like there's always like the story. Like I think the more like you get the recurring villain, like the more it's like like we saw in the invasion. Oh, we encountered them on planet 14, and
Wherever the hell that is.
yeah, wherever it was. There's like they're a threat. They must be exterminated. They must be eliminated. So therefore, what's it going to be like the next time we see the Ice Warriors?
Did the Doctor inadvertently doom the human race by sending the Ice Warriors into the sun?
Yep.
Who knows?
We should have to wait and see. So now that we've established that we're going to be watching Robin Hood Men in Tights after this, we'll get into our overall and we'll give it a score out of 5. So Trish, what are your thoughts, your final thoughts on the story?
So it's interesting you mentioned men in tights, because
Mm-hmm.
I have a question.
Okay.
Why were the human males wearing their underwear on the outside?
Not something that I picked up on. I thought it was just the design of the jumpsuits.
Yeah, but it seemed like that lining kind of went like under the crotch, and it looked like at least one of them had like, buttons down the front that you would have on guys' jocks.
Do a Prince George on us to save on laundry bills?
I don't know. Once I noticed it, I couldn't not notice it.
Yeah.
And I thought it was something you would have noticed. So I was waiting to see if we were going to mention it.
No.
No, seriously though, underwear jokes aside,
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed this story a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Jamie didn't have a lot to do, but what he did do, he did well. We had great moments from the Doctor and Zoe. Our supporting cast was very good. All of our characters were interesting. The Ice Warrior plan was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The Ice Warriors as a development from the last time we saw them was very interesting. My only negative is kind of the Ice Warriors themselves. So
Yeah.
I find them annoying.
Mm-hmm.
And while their plan was good, I don't know how the fuck they came up with it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that was a big question I was asking myself as the story was progressing. That it wasn't that they stopped at the moon and came across this great opportunity. The moon was clearly the plan. So how was that the plan? Like, how was that a thing they were meant to be doing? So for me, that did take away from it
Mm-hmm.
a bit, and the fact that the Ice Warriors like drill holes in my brain was very annoying. Throughout the course of our discussion, I have been fluctuating between a 4 and a 4.5. And I am now going to 100% commit to a 4.5. And the reason being, my issue with the Ice Warriors, the breathing and their general design and whatever, it doesn't take me out of the story though. This is a
Yeah.
personal preference.
I think we had something very similar in the topic of the web planet when it came to the Menoptera.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it, that's just a personal preference
yeah,
on my part from a design perspective.
yeah.
Um, and the whole idea of, well, how did they come up with the plan? While it was a question I was asking myself throughout, I still thoroughly enjoyed what I was watching.
Mhm.
So like that question would hold it off from being a 5,
Yeah,
but I don't think that I could just, because I've been bouncing between a 4. I gave it a 4 last night, but like our characters were so strong. There was so much there in terms of, you know, fully investing in a future and not giving yourself a fallback. There was so much there in terms of how much you invest in a single person, to the point where that person potentially loses their humanity because of it, and they become their job and that's all they are. How we would react to someone being a coward. How do you treat someone in that situation? When is collaboration with the enemy in defense of your own life an acceptable, or at least an understood
Mhm.
choice?
Yeah,
And all of that together is fantastic. So the 4 that I gave it last night, I think, is an undervalue. I don't think it's quite going to hit a 5, so I'm going to go down the middle with a 4.5.
cool.
How about you?
So yeah, like my scoring was initially a 4, but for different reasons.
Mm,
Because of my perception of the regression of Jamie's character at the expense of Zoe's, and Zoe coming across as the stronger of the two.
mm,
That was initially, but then when I went back and I thought about stuff, and I was like, as I was doing up my character stuff, I was like, well, no, to be fair, like it's kind of understandable. As I said, like the scenarios he finds himself in, it's very frustrating, and like, and now with the obviously the explanation behind the writing for Jamie's character kind of factors into that changing of scoring that I had as well. Um, the plan, yeah, I didn't think about it too much at the time because like I was just so sucked into the story
mm.
that I didn't I didn't wasn't thinking, wait a minute, how did this whole fucking thing start in the first place? But like yourself, I was like, well, it's not quite a 5. It was like, oh, it's tantalizingly close. But
Mm.
it was a 4.5. And there was one other thing that I didn't quite enjoy, and I haven't been a big fan of the way that it's been done so far. It's whenever they try to mix suspense or terror with comedy. And here we have it in that kind of weird Scooby Doo sequence where the doctor kind of like runs into an ice wire to distract it, and then it's like the weird way that he jogs, which is like knees up high into like the weird hall of mirrors corridor, and he's constantly looking around, and the ice wire is lumbering
That
after
was
him.
total like Benny Hill music.
Yeah, yakety sax is playing in the background, and like I think sometimes like that undercuts the suspense of the moment. Like Patrick
I think
Troughton
as well,
is,
like when he was in the foam, when he was trying
yeah,
to get into the weather center, and like he's pratfalling
yeah,
and whatever, and he's banging on the door for them to let him in.
yeah. Because like, no, to be fair, I have attended a phone party before. Never again. They fucking suck. They're a terrible idea. They're a terrible idea. Um,
How about a
so
foam party in a bouncy castle?
well, see, that's different because like okay, technically, like you'd imagine like a bouncing castle would be inside, approximately to an area where you could change your clothes. I was in a nightclub where the phone party was. I didn't have a spare change of clothes when I came out the fucking nightclub at 1 o'clock in the morning, and I was fucking frozen. Uh,
Paddy Fox, ladies and gentlemen.
leave me alone. Like I'm also telling you for your own good. Never go to a phone party unless you got to change your clothes nearby.
Duly noted.
Cool. But yeah, no, it's like when I remember like going back, like obviously we had the whole thing of like him clutching his bum as he did the runaway from like the Cybermen. While funny, didn't really gel up well with Vaughn being fucking murdered. Like just like 30 seconds beforehand. Um, because like it's not quite like Troughton or Hartnell in the Romans, where like, the suspense is built at the end of the preceding episode with the assassin sneaking into the room, and then the Doctor takes on the assassin, and it's kind of comedic in the way that he dispatches him.
Mm,
Because it's a split. There's a nice split between the suspense and then the comedy. Whereas here they've kind of mishmashed the two together, and it just doesn't really work.
mm.
Um, and like, but I don't mind like there was times like at the end of the Dominators where it's like oh, the lava's coming down there, so yes, but we're on the island, at which point it's like, oh my was it, oh my giddy aunt, and it's like going back inside. See, that's funny, that's fine, because like you have, it's not quite suspense, but there is an impending doom coming, and the reaction is funny. So yeah, that took me out of that specific moment a small bit, and I don't like when that happens, especially in great stories like this. So that's why I have it as a 4.5.
Okay. So, just to give a bit of a recap on season 6 so far, it's been a bit of a higgledy piggledy. So, we've had some 2.5s, couple of threes. We have had two stories though that are over 4, so that would be the invasion and this one.
Mhm.
So currently our averages are your average is 3.35 and mine is 3.5.
Mm.
So good overall seems to be the impression for this season. We'll just have to see how it continues next week when our heroes face the space pirates.
Arr.
Yar.
I would say Jinx, you owe me a Coke, but unfortunately, I would be waiting too long for it.
Anyway,
Cool. Yeah.
join us next week when we yar it up.
Also, I think walking the plank in space won't deter Jamie too much because he's now been shown that he can walk in space. Until next time, guys. Bye.
Bye.